what I thought were my limits were only my limits, because there were people doing things way beyond my limits. So I started thinking that my limits, I should change my limits. My name's David Naylor, and I first got hooked up and engaged by airbrushing when I was 19. I've always enjoyed drawing and painting and stuff like that, and I used to be a b-boy. I used to break dance at that time, and a friend of mine, a mate of mine, came in with a jacket with his custom name on the back and some universe stuff and planets and stuff like that. And I was wondering, and I said to him, hey, how did you get that done? And he said, well, I've got like a little machine that, depending on the paint that you put, you can paint on different surfaces. So I really got hooked up on that, because at that time I liked a little bit of graffiti and stuff like that, but soon I got into more serious stuff. I wanted to do serious stuff with the airbrush, so that's how I started painting with an airbrush, and that was 39 years ago. To me, it's the challenge. I mean, I don't settle for things that I can do properly. I always try to challenge myself and go a bit further on beyond to what I know how to do. So I started airbrushing, and I used to do templates. Once I did a template that took me like 8 hours for doing of an old, and I painted it in half an hour. So that wasn't so much enjoyable, because just like cutting and not drawing. So I ended up that I wanted to change that style, and I saw at the time the late Steve Driscoll doing a show in Barcelona, and he did everything freehand. So I said, that's the way. So I started doing everything freehand, and at the beginning at that time the paint wasn't so good, so it was more challenging to achieve something of a reasonable quality. So that kept me going, because I'm a person that I like to go to a certain limit all the time, and well, I think I'm sort of going where I want to go. And by that time, a little bit further on, I saw Alberto Bono's work, which to me is one of the best freehand airbrushes of all times. And we started chatting in a forum at that time, and I could see that what I thought were my limits were only my limits, because there were people doing things way beyond my limits. So I started thinking that my limits, I should change my limits. So I started talking to him a lot, and he's a really nice person. He'll stay and take the time to try to help you, even he doesn't speak English or writes English properly, but he's one of them nice people that will take the time and go through a lot of trouble to help you out. And we've been really good friends. I went to visit him, and we started talking about airbrushing and paint and stuff like that, and it's really something nice to be able to speak with someone so talented and such a good person in a natural way. And I always meet people that are nice. Normally artists are nice people, so it's like a little plus. When I started going freehand, or trying to go freehand all the time, it was really frustrating, because the knowledge that I had at that time about air pressures and paints and stuff like that, it wasn't all that much. So I used to get like a paper, color paper, or Canson blue color paper, and I used to get like creative colors, and I would thin it, and I start doing like a one color painting this size, well, like I don't know, 50 centimeters by 30 centimeters, and I started going freehand really light and gently, and when I made a mistake, like after an hour or two, I'd just get that, break it up, toss it in the bin and start all over again, because I thought and I knew that I was gonna one day be able to reach that point, and I'm still working on it. It's not that I'm done. I'm trying to go smaller and have more precision and do gradients more settled and light, and so I'm still on my way to achieve my goals. Alberto Porno, who helped me a lot, to me he was like a master. I mean, he really achieved things that at that time to me were unbelievable, and he's a really humble guy. So I find that it's the hand that holds the arrow that makes the difference, and he had a really good arrow, but he had a really wonderful hand. And to me, I have ended up thinking that I can aid and help people, because we're all unique. I might be good with freehand and you might be good in other ways, and I can try to teach you freehand work because I like it. It's engaging for me to try to pass on my knowledge, but you might pick up that knowledge and make a certain use or a different use that is more suitable for your mentality. So we're not competing, we're just sharing. That's the point of for me. What I like is to share things with other people, and also I like people to give me and point me out what I'm doing wrong. Yeah. I'm not really closed-minded. I'm really an open-minded person, because even the beginner can tell you something that you never thought of, and it might be true. How do I get to the final painting? Well, first of all, I like taking pictures. I like realism because it gives me a sense of security. Well, now I'm doing other things, but as for how I started, I like to go on realism because it gives me a certain balance to where I want to go, and that technically means that you can scale up where you're at. If you're behind or you're getting better, that is, you have like little rewards while doing so and achieving where you want to go. And I used to draw famous people with the airbrush and ask people if they knew who they were at the beginning. So then I used to use monochromic, one color, and then I did a workshop. I started doing colors. I used to blend colors, like transparent colors. I used to work with transparent colors, which was really nice, but it was really extreme, because if you go too dark with a color, it's difficult to lift it off without scratching or stuff like that. And I did do a workshop with Drew Blair, which is he's another good friend of mine. He's a nice person, and I went to one of his courses and workshops, and I learned some basic things about blue shifts and stuff like that I have continued to develop sometimes my way, because at that time he used to work only with opaques and I used to only work with transparent colors. So that course or workshop made a bridge for me to go way beyond and use opaque colors and then transparent colors on top, and if I overdid something I could go back with the opaque colors, so I had much more control. It's a workshop with Drew Blair. I liked it. I think it's something that if you can, you should do, because it's a lot of knowledge. Being here at Harder Steenbeck for a couple of days has made me change my perception of how and a manufacturer. I don't know if all the manufacturers do it. I don't think so, because here in Harder Steenbeck, they've got the technology to do an airbrush with a lot of precision and precision milling, and they've got like high tech to do so. And what they do have is something I didn't realize, because I like to tamper and file things down and make the triggers more usable for my use. I mean, for the way that I paint. It might not work for everyone, but hey, it works for me. So I custom my triggers and some springs and stuff like that. But what I found here is that they are really into developing a tool that is always gonna be a good tool, because they do all the measurements, precise measurements, and they've got their control quality that I didn't know. They were so strict with it. They are taking measurements so all the airbrush come out to work the same. There's not like what they call a Wednesday airbrush that's working fine and some other that don't work so good, so you can adjust it. I can adjust most of the airbrushes to my needs, but if you're like a beginner or an intermediate, you might not know all that much of a tool. I remember when I first had an airbrush, I was scared to death to dismantle it, because I thought I'd be difficult to put it back together again. In those days, they were a bit more complicated and delicate. I didn't start on the 50s to paint. I started on the late 70s. In 79, I think I started, 1978, 79. I started painting. But there is a difference, really. I like the old stuff, but that's for sentimental reasons. Well, to me, is you can learn in YouTube, but not everyone inside YouTube can teach properly. That's one thing. And another thing is, you have to start with, because airbrushing is not so simple. You've got like the paint flow, the thickness of the paint, the opacity of the paint. Different paint have different consistencies. Like the white paint is, the pigment is thicker, so it has to go through, and it costs more to go through than a dark blue. Okay, so you have to take in account several things. The air pressure, if it's too high or too low. You might be able to buy a cheaper airbrush, but maybe you'll start off working, and in like 3 weeks time, a month or 2 months, it'd be not working properly. So you'll have to fight and learn how to fix things while you're learning how to paint, and that is really complicated to do. So I'd advise people to buy a good tool to start off with, even if you have to pay a little bit more. In the long run, you'll have a tool that will last you long and be more reliable. And throw paint. You have to keep on throwing paint, and doing little subtle changes on the way that you work, so you can distinguish what's causing, if you have any trouble, and how to change the outcome. But you do one thing at a time. You don't change like putting a lot of reducer and changing the air, because then there's two things that you've done and you don't know which one is working and which one isn't. One at a time. Be patient. Where can people find my work? I'm not too big in the medias, but I've got a Facebook account, David Naylor. I've got the Instagram page, which is David_Naylor_fine_art_. I had to put underscores. So I'd be able to put my name in, because I want my name to be there. So you can check it out there, and if you feel you'd like to ask anything, you can try. Ask. I try always to answer as quick as possible, but I do have a private life as well. Thank you for interviewing. It's been fun.